Hello and welcome to Disney Travel Tales, episode number 32. This is a place where you can escape their real world and immerse yourself in someone's recent Disney trip. I'm Jenny, and today I'm breaking down Genie Plus for you. We used Genie Plus and paid Lightning Lanes on our last trip and loved it. I thought it would be a great idea to do this podcast to give my advice and experience with it. This show is sponsored by Trolley Lane Travel. If you've been thinking about planning that family Disney trip, there really is no better time to do it than right now. All the agents at Trolley Lane are so knowledgeable and are ready to help you get your vacation on the books. Visit their website at trolleylanetravel.com and go to their Request a Quote page to get a free, no obligation quote. Make 2022 the year of making new memories with your family. Okay, so let's get going. Imagine yourself enjoying a nice morning walking into Magic Kingdom, and let's go. Okay, so I think the best thing to do is start at the beginning and describe what Genie Plus is and what purchase Lightning Lanes are. So Disney Genie Plus Lightning Lane entrance is something that Disney added when they took away FastPass. So from the Disney website, it says, when you take your day to the next level by purchasing Disney Genie Plus service, you may choose the next available arrival window for Lightning Lane entrances at select attractions and entertainment. More than 40 experiences in the 4 theme parks are included in the service. And the individual Lightning Lanes that you can purchase is described as, for some of our most highly demanded attractions, Lightning Lane entrance access is available to purchase individually. Guests may purchase and select an arrival window one at a time for up to 2 attractions a day. This option is available for all guests, with or without Disney Genie Plus service. On our January trip, we opted to add Genie Plus on our tickets before our trip. So when you do that, it automatically adds it to all of your park days. You can wait and add it one at a time to each day once you are there or the morning of your trip. But for purposes of research for the podcast, I wanted to try it at all the parks. So we just went ahead and did it ahead of time. It was ready to go. It was super easy. And Becky, our travel agent from Trolley Lane Travel, is the one who set that up for us. Our first park day was actually our travel day. So when you're a resort guest, you can start making your Genie Plus reservations at 7 a.m. We are in Texas, and so that would have been 6 a.m. for us. And at that time, we were kind of be at the airport or probably in line for security. So my goal was sometime that morning to make us a reservation for our first Genie Plus attraction. That day, we were going to be visiting Magic Kingdom, and I wanted to grab a Jungle Cruise because typically that line is really long. I didn't make our first reservation until 7:30 a.m., but I did get Jungle Cruise with an arrival time of 4:40 to 5:40. So your arrival time is an hour window, and you can come anytime in that hour window to that attraction and check in and get to go through the Lightning Lane. Now, I'm not actually 100% positive what happens if you arrive late because we never did, but I did hear that if you arrive like 10 minutes late, they might let you go ahead and go through if you showed them that you had a Lightning Lane. However, I've also heard that if you arrive after that time mark, you kind of lose that Lightning Lane. So I'm not sure. My goal was just to try to definitely, if we were going to end up using that Lightning Lane, to just make sure that we were there in our time frame. So our arrival time for Jungle Cruise worked perfectly with our schedule. So I was really happy with that. And I thought that was a great start to our day. So a little bit of information here. I wasn't sure exactly how Genie Plus and purchasing Lightning Lanes was going to work before I had hands-on experience. With Genie Plus, you can't choose your arrival time. You get whatever is available. So if the arrival time is before the one that you're actually interested in, you kind of just close out the app and just wait for a little bit longer and try again later and see if you get that time that you want. For purchase Lightning Lanes, you get to choose the time slot that you want that from what is available. I will talk about the purchasing Lightning Lanes a little bit more in detail later on in the show. Okay, so back to our day. According to everything I read and listened to, you can make a Genie Plus reservation every 2 hours after the park opens. So you can make your first one at 7 a.m. Then, depending on what park you're visiting and what time it opens, you can make another one 2 hours after that park opens. So we were going to go to Magic Kingdom. It opened at 9 a.m. that day, so I knew our next time to get a Genie Plus was going to be at 11 a.m. You also can make your next Genie Plus reservation once you've checked into your ride. So I know that's a little bit confusing, but because we weren't actually going to be at the parks until after 1 o'clock because it was our travel day, I wanted to go ahead and get as many rides scheduled that I could before we actually even got there. That was my goal for the day. So 11 a.m. Florida time would have been 10 a.m. Texas time. And at that time, I knew we were going to be in the air. We were going to be up in the air in our airplane. So I decided to purchase the Wi-Fi on Southwest, which was $8 so that I could make our next selection. At 10 a.m., I grabbed us a Lightning Lane for Haunted Mansion with an arrival time between 12:40 and 1:40. So at this time, there really weren't a lot of good options for us at Magic Kingdom. They were all still kind of early, and being that this was our travel day, we were scheduled to land around 11:50. I really wasn't sure how long transportation to the resort and then checking into the resort and then transportation over to the park was going to take. So I tried to grab the latest one that I could that wasn't actually going to be too late. So that's why I just went ahead with the Haunted Mansion. I figured we might make it there in time. We might not. If not, it's really not that big of a deal. Also, from everything I had read, it's best to just stay on a schedule with the Genie Plus and making reservations, even if you're not going to make it, because it creates a good flow. So if you don't happen to make it, it's not that big of a deal. But by just reserving these rides, if you are there and if you are able to ride them the way that you reserved them, your day will run smoothly and you will be guaranteed to have to stand in less standby lines. After that, we were not going to be able to make our next Lightning Lane selection until 1 p.m. or until we had checked into our first ride. So we traveled, we got to the resort and everything. We were waiting for the bus to go over to Magic Kingdom. And at 1:13, I grabbed us a Lightning Lane for It's a Small World with an arrival time for 2:35 to 3:35. I knew we were going to be eating at Pinocchio's Village House, which is right next to It's a Small World. So I thought this would really, time-wise, would work out perfectly. We ended up not making our Haunted Mansion Lightning Lane because we got to the park too late. I feel like we pulled up to Magic Kingdom at like 1:45. So I just decided, don't even try to go over there. We'll just go in, enjoy our time, grab our lunch that I had mobile ordered us, and then go over to It's a Small World. So we made it to It's a Small World, and the posted wait time was 30 minutes. We made it 5 minutes with Lightning Lane. Right after we checked into that ride, so you scan your Magic Band, I went ahead and booked us a Lightning Lane for Teacups with an arrival time of 3:30 to 4:30. The wait for Teacups was only 5 minutes to standby wait, but here's another tip I have. Go ahead and book that Lightning Lane because even if the standby wait time looks low, by the time you get over there, you never know how long it's actually going to be. So we had some time after It's a Small World and we stopped and watched Mickey's PhilharMagic, and then we walked over to the Teacups where it was a walk-on with the Lightning Lane. Again, the standby wait was still only 5 minutes, but they will load Lightning Lane first. So you might have to wait a turn before you actually get on if you don't have Lightning Lane. If you're buying Genie Plus, you might as well just take advantage of every single Lightning Lane that you can. There really is no reason not to. This day at Magic Kingdom, we had limited time, so I booked a Lightning Lane for any ride that we were interested in riding that day, no matter what the standby line said. After Teacups, I booked us a Lightning Lane for Dumbo, but that arrival time wasn't until 4:15 to 5:15, so we went over to Carousel of Progress and did that. I also want to add that not all attractions or rides have Lightning Lane options. After we watched Carousel of Progress, we walked over to Dumbo and the standby line was 30 minutes and we only waited 10 minutes with Lightning Lane. After we had checked into Dumbo, I looked at our options, and because we had to leave by a certain time for a dinner reservation, none of the Lightning Lane options worked for us. There were still plenty to choose from for that day, but because we were on a limited schedule, I just went ahead and didn't book us another one. And this was around 4:30. I personally never ran into a situation where there wasn't good Lightning Lane availability, and the parks were really crowded, especially Magic Kingdom this day. So after Dumbo, we walked over to Jungle Cruise and did that Lightning Lane. The standby for that was 70 minutes, and we only waited 9 minutes with our Lightning Lane. You guys, this was amazing, and at this point, I was like, yeah, Genie Plus is totally worth it. After the Jungle Cruise, the Magic Carpets of Aladdin is right there and had a 20-minute standby wait. And since we had time, we just went ahead and got in line for that. I did check on the My Disney Experience app to see if there was a Lightning Lane available for that, but they were kind of later. And since we were right there, I was like, okay, we have 20 minutes. We'll just get in that line. For this day, which was Wednesday, January 19th, the park was, I would say, pretty crowded. We got to Magic Kingdom at 1:45 p.m. and we left at 6 p.m. And in that time, we rode 7 rides. 2 of them were attractions, so those took a little bit longer. Without Genie Plus, we never would have been able to do that. In that time, we also ate lunch, got a snack, and shopped in 3 stores. I consider this day a big win for us. Okay, so our second park day was a little weird because we had a VIP tour that day. But we still did get a couple of Genie Plus rides in that I just want to talk about. That morning, we had a breakfast reservation at Cinderella's Royal Table. And while we were there for breakfast, I tried to get a Lightning Lane for Haunted Mansion. But at this point, they were already too late in the day for us. And this was maybe right at 9 a.m. So yeah, those go pretty quickly. If I wanted to get us a morning Haunted Mansion, I probably should have done that one at 7 a.m. So we just walked over and rode the People Mover, and that was a walk-on. And then we walked over to Haunted Mansion, and the standby lane was just 20 minutes. We stood in line. We only waited 10 minutes. So we ended up getting to do that one, even though we didn't have a Lightning Lane. While we were in line for Haunted Mansion, I decided to hop on and see if I could grab us a Lightning Lane for Voyage of the Little Mermaid, and I did. So I went ahead and got that. Once we got over there, the standby said 15 minutes. It was a walk-on for us, so that was great. And then after that, we met our VIP tour guide. If you want to hear more about our VIP tour day, go back and listen to episode number 30. Me and Amelia break it down and talk all about it and what it's like to be on a VIP tour. So that evening, we had a dessert party scheduled. So while we were waiting for the fireworks to start, I decided to check the Lightning Lanes and grabbed us one for Pirates at 8:40. I had talked to the people around us, and they said the fireworks are probably going to end about 8:30. So I was like, okay, we can totally make it over to Pirates by 8:40. So right after the fireworks, we ran over there, and it was a walk-on for us with a standby time of 15 minutes. And that was the last Lightning Lane we used for the day. We also went and rode Astro Orbiter, and we got in line for that 1 minute before they closed that line. But that line does not have a Lightning Lane option. I think that line doesn't have a Lightning Lane option because in regards to the line, there's nowhere to put it. Moving on to our third park day, we were visiting Hollywood Studios that morning, and then we were going to park hop over to Animal Kingdom. I woke up at 6:30, so I would be ready to purchase us a Lightning Lane for Flight of Passage right at 7 a.m. I had heard that this ride in particular can go kind of quick, so I wanted to just make sure that I got us one. And I felt pretty confident about it, especially being that we weren't going to be there until later in the day. And so I didn't necessarily need that early morning one because those are the ones that go very quick. When I got on at 7, there were quite a few options to purchase at that time. And since I knew we were going to be there later, I went ahead and grabbed this one with an arrival time of 3:40 to 4:40. It was easy and no big deal, and the cost for 2 people was $29 that day. After that, I went ahead and grabbed us a Lightning Lane for Toy Story Mania for 9 to 10. And I got this probably around 7:15, and it was the first option available. The park Hollywood Studios opened that day at 9 a.m.
Hey parents, do your kids listen to podcasts? Do they like solving mysteries and flexing their imaginations? Mysteries at Riddleton Elementary is a new children's mystery podcast. Your kid can join Billy Bonanza and Susie Sockington on exciting and wacky adventures as they attempt to solve mysteries around their school. Mysteries at Riddleton Elementary is available now on all podcast platforms.
So once we made it over to Toy Story Mania, it had a standby wait of 45 minutes, and we only waited 10 minutes with Lightning Lane. That was the only ride that I wanted to get at Hollywood Studios because we were pretty much only there for shows that day and planned to leave early for a brunch reservation and then to park hop. At that point, I was checking Genie Plus periodically for rides at Animal Kingdom. But I don't think that park was very busy for that day because the times are all still so early. Around 1 p.m., I did grab us a Lightning Lane for Navi River Journey because it was finally a good time for us, being that the arrival time was between 2 and 3. And park hopping starts at 2. We actually ended up getting into Animal Kingdom a little bit early and made it over to Navi River Journey right at 2 p.m. It had a standby of 60 minutes, and it was a walk-on for us. I could not believe how fast we got in this line. We got in this line so fast that from our first check-in point, I barely had enough time to even get us our next Lightning Lane before we were actually even on the ride. And I wanted to stop right here and mention that some rides, you have to check in twice. You can't schedule your next Lightning Lane until after you've checked into both checkpoints. Not all rides have 2 checkpoints, but some of them do. So make sure that when you scan in, that both of your Magic Band scans well and goes through on both rides. So I grabbed us a Lightning Lane for Dinosaur with an arrival time of 2:40 to 3:40. Once we got over there, that standby was 45 minutes and we only waited 10. At this point, I looked for a Safari Lightning Lane, but they were still too early for us because we had a Flight of Passage Lightning Lane, and then I had scheduled us a dinner pickup from Satuli Canteen. So my plan at this point was just to watch those and just kind of keep an eye on a good time for us for the safari. Little did I know that that line actually closes at 5:30. I had no idea. I'll tell you more later. So for Flight of Passage, the standby was 70 minutes and we waited 35. This was probably our worst experience with Lightning Lane. I don't know if it's because I ended up spending $30 extra with the idea that I really wasn't going to wait a while, but we just kind of got stuck in that line and it felt like we didn't move for a good 20 minutes. I think they need to do some tweaking with that because I don't really know if $30 was worth waiting half the time that everyone else waited. So yeah, that was definitely not a great experience, but we still only had to wait 35 minutes. So I guess it was a win. After we ate dinner, we started walking over towards Africa, and I looked on the My Disney Experience app, and I could not figure out why there wasn't a Lightning Lane for Safari. The park wasn't even that busy, so it kind of just didn't make sense to me why I couldn't grab a Lightning Lane. But once we got over there, I saw a cast member standing there with a sign that said the line closes at 5:30, and I looked at my watch and it was 5:28. So we barely even made it to the ride. I'm guessing they stop offering Lightning Lanes at 4:30 since you do have an hour arrival time. So don't forget that. If you want to do safari, at least make your Lightning Lane reservation if you can by 4:30. Thankfully, we didn't have to wait long though since it was the end of the day. We got on and off that ride, no big deal. So while we were actually on the end of that ride, I went ahead and looked at the My Disney Experience app. And at this point, we had kind of done what we wanted to at Animal Kingdom, but there was a Lightning Lane available for Cali River Rapids. So I talked to my daughter about it and she really wanted to try it. I am not a fan at all of water rides, but we had Poncha, so I was like, okay, let's just go do it. I'm doing this for research. It's for the podcast. I can do it. So after the safari, we walked over there and there was literally no one there for that ride. So we didn't even need the Lightning Lane. But the one good thing about it is the entrance to the Lightning Lane is around the back by where the lockers are that you can put your things. So we were walking over there anyways. So that was not a big deal. We ended up riding that ride twice because there was literally no one there and they let us just stay on it. We never even had to get off of it, which was actually kind of cool. So after that, I grabbed us a Lightning Lane for It's Tough to Be a Bug. But again, it was a walk-on as well. I think people were kind of done with rides at this point. They were standing in front of the Tree of Life waiting for the beautiful show at night. And that was the last ride that we did for the day. So at Animal Kingdom, we were there from 2 to 7:30 and rode every ride that was open. Everest was closed. We rode everything else. We ate and shopped. And I'm not really sure if we could have done that without Genie Plus and buying the Flight of Passage Lightning Lane. So Genie Plus really does cut down the wait times. It can really maximize your time at the parks, especially if you're on a short trip. We only had 3.5 days at the parks. So it was really important to me to just maximize our time to make sure that we got done the things that we wanted to get done. I also just want to mention for the rides that we did have to stand in the standby line, those times are pretty accurate. They might have been off 10 minutes, a little bit shorter, but for the most part, they were very accurate. So yeah, I just don't think with Navi River Journey being a 70-minute wait, Dinosaur being a 45-minute wait, and then Flight of Passage being a 70-minute wait, I just don't think we could have got everything done that we wanted to. On our very last day, we went to Magic Kingdom in the morning and then we parked hop over to Epcot for the evening. And this was the day I feel like we maximized Genie Plus perfectly. I was very familiar with it at this point and I felt very comfortable. And so I also think that might be why. Okay, so here we go. We decided to sleep in a bit and not rope drop Magic Kingdom because we were exhausted and the weather was not good. It was very, very cold and raining. So I woke up at 8 and I grabbed us a Lightning Lane for Peter Pan with an arrival from 12:55 to 1:55. Knowing that we wanted to park hop, I figured that this would be our last ride at Magic Kingdom. So we got breakfast at the Polynesian Resort and rode the monorail over to Magic Kingdom and got to the park around 10 a.m. I knew that at 11, I could make our next Lightning Lane since the park opened at 9, 2 hours later is 11. So we decided to go over to the Tiki Room. After watching that, we walked through the Swiss Family Treehouse, and while on that, I grabbed a Lightning Lane for Buzz Lightyear from 12 to 1. We stopped for some Dole Whip and then headed over to Tomorrowland and decided to stop at Monsters, Inc. Laugh Floor. Once we were done with that, we checked into Buzz Lightyear right at 12. The standby was 25 minutes and we waited 7. I grabbed a Lightning Lane for Barnstormer while we were still in line for Buzz for an arrival time at 12:15 to 1:15. We got off Buzz, walked to Barnstormer, and checked in. And it was a walk-on for both standby and Lightning Lane, mostly because it was raining and I don't think anyone wanted to ride it. So we actually ended up riding that one twice. We got off of it and we walked right back through and rode it again. And then we decided to stop in that candy store over there to kind of just take a little break from the rain. And while we were in there, I grabbed us a Lightning Lane for Speedway for an arrival time of 12:40 to 1:40. It was posted a 5-minute wait, But when we got over there, this standby line was all the way out of the queue and down the walkway, like heading towards the teacups. So I knew for sure that was not right. We waited 10 minutes in the Lightning Lane, and this is why I would always recommend to grab a Lightning Lane for a ride, no matter what it says the standby wait time is. If I would have just been like, oh, no big deal, we'll just stand in it, it's 5 minutes, got over there, seen that long line, and then tried to grab a Lightning Lane, I might not have been able to. So if you are going to pay for Genie Plus, just grab that Lightning Lane because you never know what's going to happen. After that, we went over to Peter Pan for our Lightning Lane, and this standby line was 110 minutes. We only waited 12 minutes. Again, this is another reason I would recommend Genie Plus. It's amazing. We ended up leaving right after that because it was so cold and rainy and we wanted to change clothes back in our room before we got to Epcot. So we were at Magic Kingdom for about 2.5 hours. We saw 2 shows, walked through the treehouse, and we rode 5 rides. This park was so packed. I was actually kind of surprised how busy it was for being such bad weather. But yeah, there is no way we could have done that without Genie Plus. So when we left Magic Kingdom, I was checking times at Epcot to grab Lightning Lanes for rides, but they were still kind of early before we were actually even going to be there. After we got back to our room, changed clothes, went and got back on the bus. On our way over there, I grabbed us a Lightning Lane for Spaceship Earth with an arrival time from 2:50 to 3:50. We ended up getting there and checking in right at 2:50. Standby was 10 minutes. It was a walk-on for us. As soon as we checked in, I grabbed us a Lightning Lane for Nemo and Friends for 3:20 to 4:20. And this was our first snag with Genie Plus. So like I mentioned, when you check in with your Magic Band, you really need to make sure the green circle lights up. We went over to Nemo, and the second time I went to scan my band, it turned blue or white. I actually can't remember. And they're like, okay, just scan it again. So I did. And it kind of took a while for it to turn green, but then it did turn green. Well, it never actually reset on my Disney Experience app, so I couldn't make myself a new Lightning Lane until that one had expired at 4:20. Our next ride that we were going to do was Living with the Land, and I knew that wasn't necessarily we needed a Lightning Lane for. I was actually still kind of nervous. It said it only had a 5-minute standby wait, and I was nervous by the time we got over there if it would be longer, but the thought of having to go back to the line and try to get them to fix it, I was like, that's going to probably take way longer than that ride would actually take. So we just walked over to Living with the Land. It had a 5-minute standby. I think we might have waited 10, maybe 5. Like, we got on very quickly. And by the time we were almost done with that ride, our Lightning Lane had expired for the 4:20 time for Nemo, so I could go ahead and grab us another Lightning Lane for the Figment ride, Journey Through the Imagination, or whatever it's called. So we walked over there, and that standby was 15 minutes, and it was a walk-on for us. And after that, we were done with the rides, and we got through the whole front of Epcot in about an hour and a half. Like, it was very fast. I would say most of that time was just us walking to each attraction. Okay, so I know that was a ton of information. I hope I didn't talk too fast. So here are my overall thoughts on Genie Plus and purchasing Lightning Lanes. So number 1, make sure you learn the system. Know what time you can make your reservations. Put alarms on your phones to go off at 7, 11, and 1 so you can make those reservations. As soon as you check into a ride, make a new reservation. Don't wait, because you never know what's going to be available and what won't be. You're probably going to have to stand in line for at least a little bit. So just grab your phone, have it ready, pull up My Disney Experience, refresh it, and then make your next selection. It's so easy. I know one of the things people were worried about is how you were going to be, on your phone all the time, checking stuff. But actually, I didn't feel like that at all. Because I had these rides set up for us, I wasn't constantly checking wait times like I was when we went last year. Last year, I had my phone literally out the whole time, constantly checking wait times. Because we purchased this and I knew what rides we were going to be going to, I really wasn't that worried about wait times. So I think if you know how to use this system, I think it will make your trip better and it will maximize your time. So number 2, prioritize your ride. If you want one of the more popular rides like Jungle Cruise, Test Track, or Slinky Dog, make sure that's the first one you get for that day. And then you can plan your day around those. Number 3, don't think that you don't need a lightning lane for a ride. I know I've said it before, but you never know when a standby. You never know when a standby is going to change. So if you have a chance to grab a lightning lane, just do it. As soon as you check in, you can get a new one for another ride. If you're going to pay for it, you might as well get your money's worth. Number 4, another pro for me is that it's all done in the app. We weren't great with fast passes because at first we didn't know you could get other ones with paper fast pass after you had already used your fast pass. So for us, it was just kind of a mess. I feel like this is so much easier, especially for people who are not super familiar with the parks and the systems in place. If you can just learn Genie Plus, you'll be fine. Your trip will be great and you will be able to ride the rides that you want to ride. It's all right there. You can look at it whenever you want. If you don't want to look at it, you don't have to. But I feel like it's very, very easy to use. You just need to learn it. Number 5, back to FastPass. I felt like when there was FastPass available, the lines for FastPass sometimes were long. The Lightning Lanes felt so much faster than the FastPass lanes. When everyone is guaranteed 3 FastPass or 2 FastPass, I actually can't even remember, they're going to use them. And so this system, not everyone is going to use. So the lines are shorter. So you're going to be able to ride more rides and you're going to be able to get more out of your money's worth. On our VIP tour day, we did Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, Remy's The Runaway Mine Train, and Frozen Ever After. And those are all paid lightning lanes. And honestly, those were the lines we waited the longest in. And from what I saw, more people are just opting to buy a couple of rides at each park instead of spending money on the overall Genie Plus for each day for each person. Number 6, always book a lightning lane. It doesn't matter. If you don't use it, just book it. It's there in case you have it. It's there in case you happen to get a chance to use it. If you have the chance to book it, book it. The people that I've heard that don't like the system, they're just not using it right. If you book your first one at 7, book your next one at 11, and your next one at 1. Epcot is the only exception here because that park opens later. So you book your first one at 7, and then 2 hours after that park opens, book your next one. And then 2 hours after that, book the next one. As soon as you check into your ride, book your next one. It's really easy. I promise. You can do it. I have faith in you. And finally, if someone asked me if I recommended Genie Plus, I would 100% say yes. I loved it. It allowed us to get every single ride that we wanted to do on our very short trip. It wasn't even 3.5 days. It was like 3.25 days at the parks. And we did everything we wanted to. I was actually kind of surprised how much we got done. And there are certain rides I actually would recommend purchasing the individual lightning lane for, and some that I wouldn't. So I probably would purchase it again for Flight of Passage. I would give them one more chance to try to get it right. Seven Dwarfs, I would purchase it. Remy's Ratatouille Adventure, and Rise of the Resistance. So Remy's and Rise, they go down a lot. And if you are in line for it, you're kind of stuck. You can either stand there and wait, or you can come back later and just stand in line again. If you have a lightning lane, you can come back at any time that day and get in the lightning lane line for that ride. It really is worth your money, I promise. If you're traveling with a kid, think about it. Do you want to stand in line for an hour for the ride to go down, to just either stand there for nothing if the ride never comes back up, or to get out of line where you just wasted an hour? Or would you rather just spend a little bit of extra money? You can make up for that somewhere else and know that you're going to get to ride the ride if it does come back up without having to waste a ton of time. I mean, with kids, it seems like the right choice to make. So some of the other rides that I actually wouldn't purchase Lightning Lane for, I would just choose to rope drop. that is Space Mountain. And this is because I typically heard from others that wait time was bumped up so that people would purchase it. So I would just rope drop Space Mountain. That's an easy one to rope drop. I would also just rope drop Frozen and then Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, because those rides typically don't go down. Mickey and Minnie's sometimes does, but for the most part, if you're going to rope drop it, I think you're safe. You might just have to wait like 20, 30 minutes maybe for it. You might end up waiting that long for it anyways in the Lightning Lane. And then Frozen again. That ride never hardly goes down. Very rarely does it. So I would just go ahead and plan to rope drop that. I wouldn't purchase that. And I definitely wouldn't purchase Everest. I kind of don't know why that one's even on there. That line typically never takes a super long time. Again, I would just choose to rope drop that. Flight of Passage always has a long line from the time the park opens to the time the park closes. So that's where everyone's running in the mornings. That's why I would pay for that. Rope drop Everest. I think with a combination of Genie Plus and purchasing certain rides, that's the way to go, and that's the way to best maximize your time and have a nice, relaxing time at the parks. I hope you enjoyed the show today, and most of all, I hope it was helpful to you. If you're enjoying the podcast, please leave a positive review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. This really is the best way to help support the show. If you're traveling to Disney and want to be on the show, see the show notes for a link to a form to fill out to how to get on the show. I would love to hear your travel tale. That is why I do this show, to hear people's travel adventures. So we will be back next week, and until then, this is Genie, and may all your Disney travel dreams become a reality.